Welcome to the English Language Institute of Singapore's podcast series on classroom inquiry. I'm Ines. In this episode, we'll be listening to Miss Zalena Aman from Paya Lebar Methodist Girls' School in conversation with Dr Jeanne Ho from ELIS. In 2023, Zalena participated in the ELIS Classroom Inquiry for English Language and Literature Teachers course. Today, she will be talking about her inquiry into engaging students in poetry discussions using Socratic Circles.
Hello, Zalena. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Jeanne. Thank you so much for having me today.
Could you tell us what motivated you to undertake a classroom inquiry? What was a learning problem that you wanted to address?
I wanted to be better informed about my classroom practices and address the difficulties my students face in their learning. And my batch of students last year found it challenging to analyze and comprehend poetry, and some believe that poetry is inherently difficult to understand, while some don't know how to probe deeper into the words poets chose and the underlying messages in the poems.
Interesting. So what intervention did you design to address the problem that you just shared?
I wanted to explore how Socratic circles could be carried out in my lessons to engage my students in poetry discussion. I read up on how to implement Socratic circles and found that I could structure the circle around a piece of text that students have read. So what I did was to have students sit in two concentric circles, with the inner circle discussing the text while the outer circle listens and provides feedback on the discussion. However, I modified the process by getting my students to read a chosen poem and to write down their thoughts, emotions, and questions in a Padlet before the Socratic Circle discussion. This was to help them prep for the Socratic discussion itself.
Did you have to do any role modeling?
Well, yes, I did. I modeled how an interaction in a Socratic Circle looks like, because I don't think my students are exposed to such activity before. And I think it's very important to show students how they can actually express their thoughts and views about the topic of discussion. And I think it's equally important to model how speakers in a Socratic circle seek clarification about views conveyed by others and how they can show agreement or disagreement with the views conveyed by others. I firmly believe that this will add to the richness of the discussion.
So, Zalena, how many students did you have in each circle?
I have about 5 to 6 students in the inner circle and another 5 to 6 students in the outer circle.
Why did you choose Socratic circles as the intervention to address the learning problem that you had observed?
I firmly believe that active engagement significantly deepens our learning, and that participating in meaningful discussions helps us construct knowledge more effectively. I've also heard about the numerous benefits that Socratic circles offer in engaging students, though I understand they can be challenging to implement. Therefore, I was committed to investing the necessary time and effort to incorporate Socratic circles into my poetry lessons to enhance my students' learning experience.
Okay. Did you read up on any literature?
Yes, I did. The literature suggests that Socratic circles foster exploratory talk, which is an important feature of dialogic learning. And the writer, Alexis Brown, noted that when students engage in exploratory talk, they open their ideas to critique and development, and this enables them to build on or modify their ideas. And I guess discussions with a Socratic circle setting create a dialogic classroom in which students can explore text in more depth. And in brief, students are provided with the opportunity to co-construct their understanding of a piece of text.
So what did you hope to achieve by incorporating Socratic circles into your lessons?
When I selected Socratic circles as the main intervention, I aimed to design meaningful classroom interactions where my students engage deeply with a poem. I wanted them to be able to explore multiple interpretations and also develop their own personal responses. And by fostering an environment of thoughtful discussion and active engagement, I really hope to enrich their understanding and appreciation of poetry.
Zalena, I understand that your inquiry question was, to what extent do interactions in Socratic circles promote better discussion and understanding of poetry for secondary 4 students? How did you find the process of crafting this inquiry question?
I struggled a little in coming up with the inquiry question. I had to remind myself to stay focused and to scope the question effectively. Sometimes I got too ambitious in trying to address the many learning challenges my students faced, that my scope was too wide and my research question was too wide to address the problem at hand. But I'm grateful that you have actually helped me as my mentor to scope my research questions and help me focus on the challenges at hand.
You're welcome. In fact, I enjoyed helping you with your study and I learned a lot from it as well.
Thank you.
Who were the participants of your study?
They were my students in my Sec 4 elective literature classes. There were 2 classes and there was a mix in terms of ability and interest in literature. Some students shared their views readily, but of course, a majority of them would only respond when called on. However, most students wanted to do well in all of the subjects, including literature.
It's great that your students wanted to do well in literature. What types of data did you collect and how did you go about collecting them to answer your inquiry questions?
I integrated the data collection with getting my students to reflect on their experience participating in a Socratic Circle discussion. I crafted the reflection questions for the students in both circles, the inner and the outer. For example, I asked students in the inner circle, what did you speak about and what questions did you ask? When I asked the students who had participated in the outer circle, I got them to think about what have they, the inner circle, done well and what areas can they improve. So this served as a form of feedback to the students in the inner circle. I also asked all students how the Socratic Circle activity had helped them in understanding the poem and how it could have been better designed. And finally, I got them to record their reflections in a Padlet to draw commonalities amongst their learning experiences. And since I collected the qualitative data, I read through all the students' reflections to see if I could identify common points raised by the students. And what I did was to look for common points and certain challenges that the students faced. And of course, the improvements that they suggested to make the Socratic Circle better.
So based on your analysis, what did you learn from carrying out your inquiry?
Well, I learned that when students discussed a poem in a Socratic Circle setting, they were actively involved in analyzing the poem, explaining their interpretations and learning from alternative perspectives. And students in a circle, the inner circle, affirmed they spoke about the literary devices used, that expressing their thoughts helped them to better understand the poem, and that they appreciated being able to hear other people's interpretations. For example, one student observed how, as a non-Christian, she learned from her peers the significance of a mass in the poem Dulce Decorum Est.
Did you feel that there was anything missing in your students' discussion?
What I noticed was that there was limited evidence of evaluation of perspective, and there were also fewer counter-arguments. And I think there is a need to focus the discussion in a Socratic Circle by preparing some questions for students to discuss and even assigning a student to encourage diverse participation. And I think where possible, I would also organize a Socratic Circle. Perhaps it's even smaller, so that this will give every student more time and a bit more space to express their opinions.
Yeah, I think definitely if you have fewer students in each Socratic Circle, more students will have time and space to express their opinions. After you have gone through this inquiry experience, what was the experience like for you?
Well, I enjoyed the inquiry experience and I believe many of my expressive students did too. However, the discussion can only be effective if everyone contributes. There were awkward moments where students took time to start the circle going and students had to be given more time and encouragement to contribute. Also, some students were so used to getting answers from teachers that I had to assure them that their peers too had valuable views and insights that we could all learn from.
Yes, agree that some of our students are used to getting answers from teachers. Now that you have gone through a classroom inquiry, what was your experience like? Was it what you expected? Were there any surprises?
The experience was pretty much as expected, with the more expressive ones contributing more to the discussions, while the quieter ones, of course, preferred to remain quiet. However, I was also impressed by the insightful views by some of my students and found some of the views rather interesting. It was interesting to hear their take and their perspectives about some issues in the poem.
So sounds like you definitely have learned quite a bit from your experience conducting a classroom inquiry. Would you encourage other teachers to conduct classroom inquiries?
Definitely, I would. I think it is important for us teachers to continue improving our teaching practices to enhance the learning of our students. And one way is through classroom inquiry, as inquiry can help us to do so with theories and bodies of knowledge to fall back on. It also helps us make informed choices based on the data gathered on what works and what doesn't. Personally, it has given me a sense of purpose and motivation to read about the works of others and to expand my understanding and knowledge on the areas I research. On top of that, the data I gathered from my students and even from my own reflections were authentic, and that has definitely added to the richness of my own learning.
So now that you have gone through one round of classroom inquiry, what is one tip that you would give to teachers who are interested to embark on classroom inquiry?
One tip that I have would be to work in a team so that researchers can bounce ideas off each other, as sometimes flying solo can be overwhelming. And having a mentor is good too, and I'm sure the specialists in ELIS are always there to help.
Definitely. Thank you, Zalena, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeanne.
You've just listened to an episode of the Classroom Inquiry podcast series from the English Language Institute of Singapore. To find out more about the ELIS podcast, visit go.gov.sg /ELIS podcast. Thank you for listening.